Quick hold for a moment. I forgot my coffee. I'll be right back. Hey friends, welcome to another video. Obviously today we are going to be talking about my May wrap up. I almost said TBR. Not gonna lie to you guys, I am super tired today. I shot a wedding for someone all day yesterday. My bones are aching, my muscles hurt, but it's okay. I promised myself and to you guys that I would try to be much better at keeping up with my wrap-ups. Plus, I read 10 books this month. In order to compile all of that into like a recent reads video with other months, it's just so easy to lose track so quickly what I've read and when, and I like to share my thoughts when they're fresh because my memory is awful. So today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in May. I actually read 6 novels out of the 10, and then 4 of those were actually manga / graphic novels. I had a very productive reading month. I think at this point I'm actually a little over halfway through my Goodreads reading goal for the year, so we're right on track. But anyways, go ahead and grab yourself an iced coffee, hot cup of tea, whatever drink or snack you prefer, and let's just go ahead and start chatting about all the books I read. So starting us off with probably the worst book I read so far this year. I don't like to start out on a negative note, but we may as well just get it out of the way, is Hide by Kiersten White. You guys, this was probably a 1 star for me. Probably my most disappointing read that I've had so far this year, but I actually am not going to share any thoughts about why I didn't like this book with you guys. I'm going to keep you on the edge of your seat because I have a vlog coming out later this week that you guys don't want to miss, because it's been a long time since I've ranted about a book that I did not like. I hope this doesn't deter you from picking this book up, but also it was not it. There is a lot of other books out there like Bird Box and Annihilation that have done it so much better than this book. It's really sad I didn't like it, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. I even bought the audiobook for this because I was so excited. I wanted to be fully submersed and creeped out in this book. But if you don't know what this book is actually about, we have 14 contestants that have signed up to hide in this haunted, like rundown amusement park, and nobody knows why it's haunted, but at the end, if nobody finds them at the end of a week, then they will get a $50,000 prize. This was not what I thought it was gonna be. Maybe that's why I didn't love it, but again, gonna keep my mouth shut. I've got a lot more to say, but stay tuned for a vlog coming later. You will probably be able to tell by the rest of these books that I was in a very light, fluffy, easy reading mood, especially because it's springtime and we're soon going into summer. So I have quite a few lighthearted books, romance books. Starting off with a book that everyone I'm sure has read is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Yes, I did give this 5 stars. This is probably my favorite book I've read so far this year, probably. I already knew that I loved Emily Henry going into this book. I've read some of her backlist titles, including A Million Junes, which is a YA contemporary romance book. So I've been a fan of hers for a long time. I love this book. I also feel bad that a lot of people thought this was an enemies to lovers romance book. It's definitely not that, so if you decide to pick this up, I don't know why people were thinking that. Nora is a literary agent and her sister named Libby really just wants to go visit this little place in North Carolina called Sunshine Falls. There's a book series or a book that her sister adores, and this is where the setting is of that book. And so her sister's like, let's just do a little getaway and go on a cute little sister vacation. And then they run into Charlie. And Charlie is actually from back in the city where Nora is from. And there's just so many other things in this book that made it 5 stars for me, but unfortunately I can't talk about it because it's spoilery. But just know that if you love those small town vibes, if you love banter, if you love humor, like Emily's humor is absolutely superb. I have never in my life laughed out loud so much in a book as I did with this one. Like, she is just hilarious. I want to be Emily Henry's best friend. This is the book of the summer. There is grief, there is sadness, there's happiness, there's funny moments, there's steamy moments. This book was just so well balanced, and that's what I appreciate. I always have to have a little bit of a plot within my romance. Obviously, I loved it. In case you can't tell from the millions of tabs that I had in this book, I had such a fun time with it. I need a TV show or I need a movie because this would be the cutest thing ever. I read 2 more romances this month. The next one that I read on my Kindle is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I decided to pick this one up on a whim, mainly because I was looking at just super popular romance books that people have read, because I am not well versed in that genre, so obviously I have a lot of catching up to do, and this book did not disappoint either. I loved this book as well. We get a lot of that British humor from the author in this book. If you don't know anything about this book, we have Chloe, who struggles with a chronic illness, and then we have Redford, who is like her handyman or her landlord maintenance guy that does all the things for her apartment. And these two strike up a friendship that I just fell in love with immediately. They have always had a thing for each other, and Chloe has always spied on him through her window because he's an amazing painter. A lot of things I could relate to in this book, especially from Chloe's perspective. She is like a social media manager, she's a web designer, she loves books, she has a lot of the same interests that I do. I could relate to so many aspects of who she is as a person, and Red was hilarious and also adorable the way he took care of her. My only big issue about this book is there is a part in here that I don't really like how Redford talked to her, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it was just weird. It just felt very out of character for this character. I gave this 4 stars because of that. So I think there's 2 other books in kind of like this series. I did also really love the sister dynamic in this book as well. Another book that I'm so glad I did not put off for any longer, and that is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Let me just tell you, I was a little bit skeptical going into this because I have read In a Holidays that I really did not like. I've read The Unhoneymooners, which was just okay, so I was definitely a little bit scared going into this. So this actually seems to be the most popular of this author duo, so I was like, okay, the 3rd time's a charm, right? So we're gonna go ahead and try, and I was also a huge sucker for this cover. We have 2 friends named Macy and Elliot who grew up together in high school. They were really good friends, and I love a good friends to lovers. That's my favorite trope. This is a dual timeline, so we also see the present day and what these characters are going through versus what happened back then. And this book dives into grief. This book dives into coming of age. The 2 of them are such hardcore book nerds, and so I loved that aspect of it. I just love Elliot as such a sweet, kind-hearted person, and the way he treated Macy, just, oh my goodness, you guys. I was a puddle of mush after I read this book. I did not want it to end. I wish this could be made into a series. Looks like a cute frilly romance, but in all honesty, there is a lot that's explored in this book. The next book that was a very pleasant surprise, and I'm also so happy I did not put this off until fall, because now I can recommend it to you all for fall, and that is Anatomy, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. This book is a young adult historical horror mystery romance? There is so much packed into this book, you guys. I feel like this would be one of my top book recommendations now for anyone, just because there is so many elements to dive into with this book. We have our main character Hazel, who really wants to become a doctor, but not only a doctor, a surgeon, and she really wants to get into the classes for Dr. Beecham, who is this very popular man who has discovered a lot of medical things. She just adores him and wants to become more like him, so of course she wants to take his classes, but unfortunately women are not allowed. So she dresses up as a man, she steals her brother's clothes, and she ends up taking classes. Well, she gets found out, obviously, that she's a girl, and this book was just wild. From start to finish, I was so intrigued. At the beginning, we have these young guys who are actually grave robbers, and so it's very gory at the beginning. There's a tiny bit of magical realism sprinkled throughout this book. There is a lot that goes down in this book. This is another one of those books that I did not want to end, and I just found out the author is either coming out with a sequel or like a companion novella to this. The ending was a bit predictable for me, so I had to bump it down half a star, so it's about 4.5 stars for me. But that didn't really keep me from loving this. The last book that I decided to pick up before we go into the graphic novels and the manga is Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. This book I was itching to get to. I could not wait any longer. I think I read this a week or two after it came out. I loved Behind Her Eyes. I know Behind Her Eyes isn't for everyone, but this book did not disappoint, and I was so glad it didn't, because now I think I can call her one of my auto-buy thriller authors. In this book, we have our main character named Emma, who is basically counting down the minutes and the days until she turns 40, because 40 is when her mother went insane. Her mother also struggled with insomnia and hallucinations, and she basically went mentally crazy. So in this book, she's actually in a mental health facility, and Emma's sister is trying to get her to make a connection again with her mother. So there is some family drama as well in this, but these scenes where Emma is having these crazy weird things happen to her in the middle of the night was so creepy. I also highly recommend the audiobook with this. My heart was actually racing while I was reading some of these parts, and I know I'm being really vague, but I really think that's the correct way to go into her books especially, and I think that's why she keeps her synopses so short, because she really just wants you to go into the book knowing little to nothing about her stories. Also, if you have not read Behind Her Eyes, I recommend reading that first, because in the epilogue of this book, there may be a nod or a hint to Behind Her Eyes that you may not be able to appreciate unless you have read Behind Her Eyes first. I was so amazed how Sarah weaved the two stories together. The only part of this that knocked it down a star for me is the ending felt a little bit too convenient. It wasn't left up to your imagination. We very much get a clear explanation from a character. Like, I really want a thriller to make me think a little bit more than just having a character info dump, if that makes any sense. I don't know, it just felt very choppy and out of place to me, but I still gave this a solid 4 stars. Absolutely loved it, and definitely recommend picking up during a stormy or rainy day. Next, we're going to get into the 2 manga and 2 graphic novels that I read. The first book that I read this month that I started off with is Cici's Journal. This was so sweet. Honestly, another pleasant surprise. I had my friend Keisha telling me how much that I needed to read this because it would not disappoint. She was so right. This is a middle grade graphic novel where we have Cici, who absolutely loves solving mysteries. She keeps a journal of all her observations, and throughout this book was so cool because we have mixed media. We have news articles, we have conversations with Cici in her diary or her journal. The artwork is absolutely fantastic, you guys. The color palette, I just loved this so much. This book actually contains 2 different stories. The first one has to do with this mysterious man who keeps coming out of the woods outside her and her friend's treehouse covered in paint, and they are trying to figure out what's behind this forest, why he's covered in paint. And the second book has to do with an elderly lady who keeps checking out the same book every single week, and she's the only one that checks out this book. And the second story actually brought me to tears a little bit because it was so cute and so sweet, especially for anyone that loves books. The only part that I feel like wasn't quite 5 stars for me is Cici is kind of becoming a little bit obsessive to where she avoids her friendships. She ends up not being a really great friend to her friends, and there was a little bit too much drama mixed into that I really didn't care about. But on the other hand, I can definitely see why this is good for middle graders to read, so they know how to solve their problems with their friends and understand that all friends go through issues and how to manage that. So I thought it was handled well. I just wasn't the biggest fan. It felt kind of out of place when she's trying to solve all these mysteries and then you have this backstory of drama with her friends. But there is a second book to this which I really need to go ahead and buy because these are just so precious. I loved the stories. Cannot recommend this enough. I also picked up Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulsen. I honestly picked this one up on a whim as well. My friend Elizabeth sent it to me and she was like, you need to read this because it's so cute. There's actually a second book coming out, I think later this year. Garlic, who has all of her vegetable friends living in this garden. They tend this garden with a local witch, I believe, but then one day they learned that a bloodthirsty vampire moves into the castle that's across the way. I could relate so much to Garlic because she is like this introvert that doesn't want to leave her house. She's just really comfortable with who she is, but she also struggles with anxiety, so I thought that representation was really well done in this. But she has friends that help her cope and encourage her, and I loved seeing the character development of Garlic in this story. But the humor was also absolutely hilarious. There's so many puns. There was so many ironic moments with these characters because they are all vegetables. You have a carrot, you have celery, but there's so many hilarious characters in this story and I loved it. I wish it had been a little bit longer because I loved it so much, but yeah, definitely recommend getting this one too. I also decided to continue reading Spy Family. I am now on volume 6 out of the 7, I believe, that are now out, so I'm almost caught up. I'm not going to go too much into detail with this story because I feel like I'm so far in at this point, and you guys have probably heard me talk about it a million times, but there is a tennis match that happens in this story. There's also a new character that gets introduced, so I had a fun time learning more about behind the scenes of kind of this mission, and just having a new character was a little bit refreshing instead of following our same 3 characters within the family. I thought this one was really fun. It wasn't my favorite volume out of the whole series. There isn't even that many volumes of this, so you should give it a shot. It's not going to be a long series either. I want to say it's going to be like 10 volumes possibly. I cannot get enough of this. I love the covers, I love the story, and yeah, this was just a really fun time. Last but not least, I read I Had That Same Dream Again. I read this and Insomnia for a weekend readathon blog. I've actually had my eye on this book for quite some time now. It just looks very spring, so I finally decided to pick this up, and wow, this packed a punch. It looks cute, but oh my goodness, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this one for suicide and depression. Our main character is actually a middle schooler or grade schooler named Nanoka, and she is given this school project to define what happiness is. So she befriends this lonely teenager who loves to write, this elderly lady, and then another teenager friend. So she has these 3 friends who she's trying to kind of interview and ask them what their definition of happiness is, and it's so thought-provoking. There is a little bit of a plot twist in the end, which I really enjoyed. I didn't see it coming at all, but it was also sad a little bit too. So you know a manga is good if it can make you do that, but I still feel like this was 3.5, 4 stars for me, maybe because I wanted something a little bit more lighthearted. I guess I went into this book expecting something different, but I feel like this definitely had similar vibes to I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. I did like this book, but overall it wasn't like a new favorite. Like I said, there's some trigger warnings, so make sure you look those up before you get into this. Well friends, I feel like I had a pretty successful reading month. 10 books is pretty good, especially with working full time. I had some photography things to wrap up, so I am very pleased with how much that I actually read this month. Before you leave this video, go ahead and comment your favorite book that you read in May. I would love to hear if you had any new favorites, if maybe you had some disappointments like I did, but overall I feel like I gave most of these books 4 or 5 stars, which I feel like was pretty great. So I hope you guys had a great reading month as well. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video.